All right, we're on to the AFC East, and lots of news coming out of this division. Starting with the Buffalo Bills at -225. I mean, obviously the Super Bowl favorite. Tons of news out there for them. Huge year last year. Great playoff performance with the Patriots. Great playoff performance against Kansas City. A lot of people think if they pulled off the Kansas City game, they would be in the Super Bowl and likely win. So a lot of hype on the Buffalo Bills coming into the year. What do you think? Is it Super Bowl or bust for them headed into 22?
I do think it is Super Bowl or bust for our Buffalo Bills. We should be honest. We're Bills fans, right? That's our team. We've supported them thick and thin throughout the years. So it's nice to say on a show like ours now that the Buffalo Bills are the consensus Super Bowl favorites right now. And considering what they've done the past few years, competing, making it to the AFC Championship game, being one step away from beating Kansas City last year and probably being the team to go on to the Super Bowl. And now you're the consensus Super Bowl favorites. You've improved the roster. It's Super Bowl or bust now. You can't lose to Kansas City or any other AFC playoff team for that matter in the AFC Championship game and call it a season. You have got to make it this year, and you've got to win it all. And that's the expectation of both the Bills fan base at this point in time and the rest of the NFL, right? You've put the NFL on notice. The Bills are here. They're here to stay. One of the best rosters in the NFL overall, the best quarterback, the best defense. The list goes on. And right now, the expectation is as high as it can get. You have got to go out and prove it this year. No more screw ups. You've been through the aches and pains. You've been through the growing steps of, you lose in the playoffs. You can make it to the AFC Championship game. You lose a heartbreaker to Kansas City. You've got to take that next step this year, or you're forever in the shadow of the Kansas City Chiefs if you let them beat you again, or any other team for that matter.
Also, they made the playoffs the last 3 years. Last year lost the divisional. Year before that lost the conference championship, and then the year before that lost the wild card game. I think this year with Coach McDermott and kind of the trend of the Bills and what they're doing with this roster, you gotta get a Super Bowl eventually. Otherwise, you get the Green Bay Packers or the New Orleans Saints tag of they get to the playoffs every year, but can't win the big one, can't get to the big one. I think they're in that territory, and that's why I do think it is Super Bowl or bust for them. Because if you bust, that would be 4 seasons in a row now where they lost in the playoffs. And arguably have been one of the better teams in the league each of those years. So it's Super Bowl and bust for legacy, for Sean McDermott. I know they have years left, but eventually they're going to have to win that one to be recognized as a top group.
I will say this, though. The Buffalo Bills control the narrative in the AFC completely. Single-handedly, only the Buffalo Bills control the narrative in the AFC. And what I mean by that is if they get the number 1 seed, that's expected of them, right? If they start losing a few games and they allow a team like the Bengals or Kansas City or whatever team, say it's Kansas City, then that narrative sticks. The Bills can't get over the hump of Kansas City. If it's, the Bengals who went to the Super Bowl, then it's the Bengals are legitimate and the Bills are second best now to the Bengals. The Bengals took that next step over the Bills. If it's the Chargers, it's Justin Herbert and the Chargers have now taken over and they are better than the Bills and are the team to beat. Whatever team you insert from this AFC, the Bills control the narrative. Where the Bills are in the standings, how the Bills do in the playoffs, that's going to control the narrative in the AFC going forward. Even next season, we will see that based on this Super Bowl or bust expectation. So a good place to be if you're a Bills fan, but now you've got to deal with internally what that means for the organization. How do you control your own narrative now? It's hard to play the underdog when you're the favorite.
Right, and this has got to be one of the tougher years. The AFC is absolutely stacked. There's great quarterback play throughout on paper, right? It's just every team looks good in the AFC. So it's going to be a tough road for Buffalo. Moving on to the next topic, though, impact of losing Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll, been the offensive coordinator there since 2018, and now moves to the head coaching job, which is well-deserved for the Giants. Leaving the Bills with a vacancy that Ken Dorsey fills. Ken Dorsey, previously the quarterback coach, gets promoted to offensive coordinator. What do we think about Ken Dorsey, first time offensive coordinator, been in the league numerous years with Carolina, obviously played in Miami. I think he did play in the NFL a couple of years as well. Been around a long time, but first time as an offensive coordinator. What do you think the impact on the offense will be?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The biggest thing, again, being a Bills fan that we know is this is Josh Allen's handpicked guy. He said, I wanted Ken Dorsey to be the offensive coordinator, and the Bills listened. Not every organization would do that. We've seen the Packers, make Aaron Rodgers pretty upset through the years. But here in this time, Ken Dorsey was with the organization already. It was an easy internal hire. It was the right fit for Josh Allen, for this team. But in the offseason, the big question has been, how does this change the Bills' offense, if at all? And look, the Bills aren't suddenly going to become a mostly run team, all right? That would be crazy. Nobody's that crazy when you have Josh Allen at quarterback. You're still a pass-first team. You're still a pass-second team. The run game has to improve and get better, but it still revolves around Josh Allen. You can't break this offense, right? He's not crazy enough to do that. But what it could do, there's been talk of, does he run more 12 personnel, meaning 2 tight ends on the field, right? Does he choose to mix it up with the running backs, running more screen passes, which the Bills have not necessarily led in over the past few years? There's a lot that could change under Ken Dorsey in this offense in the same manner of, using the tools that you have. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, those guys are going to light it up this year and still be there. But I'm excited to see what Ken Dorsey can bring to this offense. And the truth is, we haven't seen it yet, right? We know that the Bills have kept it vanilla all preseason and have not shown anything in their playbook whatsoever. I think they're going to come out in this first Rams game and start to be dynamic and show what it is that Ken Dorsey wants to do on offense, especially against a good challenge like the Rams to start out. You can't hold back. Week 1, you are throwing it out all on the table, and we are going to see exactly what kind of offensive coordinator and what kind of play calls Ken Dorsey is going to make.
Right. He's got a lot of pressure on him. The Bills last year, 3rd in the league in points, 5th in offensive yards. Defense was 1st in points, 1st in yards. So it's a top group. And for a first-year offensive coordinator, I mean, that's going to be tough. But having been there, having the relationship with Josh, knowing that Josh, wants you as an offensive coordinator, I think that just kind of helps learning. Also, I think they're going to be more balanced. I think the focus for the Bills will be to run the ball more. You bring in James Cook. We know Singletary. I think Singletary's above average back in the league. Yeah. I think he's locked that job up, year after year and performed well when asked to do it. And then you got Zach Moss in there as kind of a fiery guy who can hit somebody and maybe make a spark for the team, bring the team back into the game. We've seen that before as well. Speaking on the defense, Von Miller comes in. Now, this was the top-ranked defense last year, and we know that they're fast. They play very fast, very comfortable in their scheme. Just maybe they've been trying to build this defensive line for a few years and, draft Greg Rousseau last year, add Oliver, a top 10 pick. They've had some turnover, but I think this group with Von Miller, now you have a top-tier defensive line, which is going to make this defense even better. What's your thoughts on Von Miller?
First of all, again, as Bills fans, we have to stop, pause, take a deep breath and say, holy heck, Von Miller is a Buffalo Bill. And I know we've had all offseason to accept this, but as a Bills fan, we know that we were felt like we were just missing one piece to really take that defense over the top. I mean, like you said, you listed the stats. The Bills defense has been number 1 and very competitive under Sean McDermott since he's been here. But a guy like Von Miller, you're talking one of the elite defensive players in the NFL. And I think this was a move that just takes that defense to a place it hasn't been yet. You now have to keep track of multiple guys on the field, right? And especially with Trey White being out a few games to begin the season, you need that dude on defense that they're afraid of. And Von Miller, no matter what team he's on, is that kind of player. And I cannot wait personally just to see him on the field week 1. I know we got a little bit in the preseason. You could see him practicing all that, but to see Von Miller as a Buffalo Bill week 1 versus the Rams, it's going to be super exciting to see him. And I can't wait to see it. He's been one of my favorite players throughout the NFL. You and I lived in Denver for a time there, and he was a absolute god there.
Right.
I mean,
beloved in the community, actively involved in the community.
Such a great human being. As great as he is on the football field, he is a superhero to kids and parents and everybody in Denver and the communities.
And now Bills Mafia.
Now Bills Mafia, and he's a part of it, and he loves it, and we're so glad he's here. And man, he's going to make this defense unbelievably good. I mean, you're talking now the pass rush has to be there. Something they couldn't do last year was close on the pass rush. They tended to lead over the past few seasons in pressure rates, but not finishing and getting the sacks. I think Von Miller changes that for him.
Yep, just need that one sack in the Kansas City game, ends it for the Chiefs and wins it for the Bills. That's what they were missing. I think Von Miller will give you just that one sack in the playoffs. That's all you need. Key moment, right? That's what we're looking for from him. So
even just to get the attention, maybe it's Greg Rousseau who gets the sack, but Von Miller is getting the attention regardless.
Yeah, I'll never forget the Denver Broncos and Patriots AFC Championship game where Von Miller single-handedly won that game because he was disrupting the timing for Tom Brady. And as we all know, Tom Brady gets the ball out very fast. He knows how to dissect the defense extremely fast. And Von Miller was that good getting around the edge and disrupting that. So the guy's a special player. Anyway, Buffalo over under 11.5 wins seems pretty high. Hard to get 12 wins in any year.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts?
With the 17 game schedule this year, and the teams that the Bills play, I know we're going to pull up the schedule here. I'm all over the over 11.5 wins. I think 12, 13 wins is where I see the Bills at for sure. This schedule to start out is rough. Look at this. I mean, the first really 7 games, 6 on the schedule before the bye week. You've got the Rams, the Tennessee Titans, Miami, which is, competitive, but the Bills tend to own Miami. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, okay, maybe not that great, but then Kansas City and follow that up with Green Bay. It's a tough start to the season for the Buffalo Bills. We're going to know who this team is right away, especially with that NFL opener next on Thursday night. That'll be so much fun to see. And I think the schedule, though, after that, you play in one of the weakest divisions. You've got 6 games against the Jets, New England, and Miami, where you should be the favorite by far. And then you've got other games on the schedule that are very winnable. Look, the Bills aren't immune. Just like every other team, they're going to win some games that they're not favored in, and they're going to lose games that they should definitely win throughout the season. But I think there's enough padding in this schedule when you look at it that 11.5 for me is a safe number to bet the Bills on the over and get to that 12-13 easy win mark.
Right, and I think, they won 11 games last year. Could have easily been 13. You're talking inches from the goal line against Tampa Bay. They slip on 4th and inches from the 3-yard line in Tennessee. I mean, that's this bet. If you're willing to bet on that 4th and 1 in basically 5-yard line for that 12th win, that's the difference, right? It's the inches. Josh Allen slips versus Josh Allen makes the play. It comes down to one play for me. So I would take the under here. I do think the division is more improved. The Jets roster is improved. Miami's roster is improved. Normally those are sweeping wins for the Bills or give me wins for the Bills. I don't think that's the case this year, especially with Zach Wilson in his second year and all that pressure on Tua. I expect him to be improved. So I would take the under on the Bills at 11.5. And again, going back to last year,
you're going on the under
small place. I'm taking the under on 11.5.
Oh, okay, you think 11 wins is where the Bills are? I think
10 or 11.
Okay,
yeah,
all right,
that's where I'm at. That's
all right. You're a Bills fan, right? Bills Mafia is going to come after us.
I'm also trying
to
be a realist here, and
Bills Mafia is going to come after us for that one. I know it, Eric, but that's okay because I said the over, and I'm more confident, and I think 13 wins is where I see us at.
So you're saying they make those plays versus not make them.
I definitely think that's the difference this year. Yeah.
No worries. I will take that. We'll continue that conversation throughout the season for sure.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to Miami. Plus 225 for Miami, 225. lots of additions here. They've won 10 games in 2020. They won 9 games in 2021. They fire the coach. A lot of drama in the offseason with the ownership and then the lawsuit with Brian Flores, which is really eye-opening for fans. I think a little bit of a distraction. They now bring in a new head coach. Tyreek Hill comes in. Jalen Waddle's still there. I mean, they look great on paper. Can they put it all together?
Yeah, I mean, I'm higher on Miami, I think, than most people are. But, these odds, this starting one here, the plus 225 is to win the division. And I think that these odds are where they belong, because in a normal division that's competitive, 225 is a pretty good bet. I mean, you're like, okay, I get some return on this if I think they're going to win. But in a division where you have the Buffalo Bills, as we just talked about, the consensus favorite to win the division, to win the AFC, to win the Super Bowl, I mean, this is, a tough bet to make for me is taking this plus 225 here. So I'm leaving that one alone. But I am generally high on the Miami Dolphins and the changes they've made and what this roster can do this season. And we're going to talk about that as we go through these points here. And that starts with really the number one guy that they brought in, Tyreek Hill, one of the hottest topics of the offseason, right? Tyreek Hill traded to the Dolphins, and now it's a matter of seeing what he can do on this roster versus being on that Kansas City roster. We all know what the Kansas City Chiefs are and what they've proven. Tyreek Hill became one of the best wide receivers in the NFL under Patrick Mahomes in that offense. The question for Tyreek Hill now is what can he do in this offense with a new quarterback in Tua, and can they still take advantage of his skill set, the speed, the ability to beat the defenders and get open, and we'll see if he can do that on this roster. So I think the biggest thing here with the floor is now he is the number one guy, so he will get the most attention on this Dolphins team when it comes to the being receiver. On the Kansas City Chiefs, that might not have been the case. You had so many weapons, you had to guard other guys. So I'm actually more bullish on Jalen Waddle from an over and getting the stats perspective. Jalen Waddle, one of my favorite receiver, actually was my number one ranked receiver from that draft class, that included a lot of big name receivers. So that's my worry with Tyreek Hill. I think he's going to get more attention. Can they take advantage of his skill set the same way that Kansas City did? I'm not so sure on. The ceiling is that he's still going to put all those tools to use and maintain that high level of production and be that, one of the best receivers in the NFL. And that means a lot of production in this Miami offense.
For sure. And Miami, they're 25th in yards last year as an offense. And there's only a few players in the league that can change the outlook or the dynamic of an offense with a single signing, right? And Tyreek Hill is certainly one of those people. He scares defenses, right? The Bills players always comment on he's the fastest human they've ever seen. They clearly cannot guard him. We saw the back and forth with Kansas City. This happens to numerous teams. We've watched him, dominate the AFC for the past few seasons. So, you say you're bullish on Jalen Waddle. I'm more bullish on the run game with Mike McDaniel coming from San Francisco, that Kyle Shanahan game. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are going to scare defenses to play deep coverage. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on linebackers to run up and make run stops. And it's just going to be very difficult to manage for a defense. So do we see Tyreek Hill be the statistical freak? Like in fantasy, is he going to be great? I'm not so sure about that. I think at this point in Tua's career, you've got to help him out as much as you can, take the pressure off a little bit. And I think Mike McDaniel can do that in the run game.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't expect a lot of stats from Tyreek Hill compared to what he's used to having, but certainly a threat, and certainly Miami could, be a top seed.
You brought up a great point with the running backs because they do have, the coach coming in who likes to run the ball. And who did they get? Well, they went out and got Chase Edmonds. They brought in Raheem Mostert, who's familiar with the coach. They still have Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed on there. This is, an elite spot for them. They are going to have a run game that is dynamic. And when you have those types of receivers, that's only going to open up the space for you. So I do agree that they are going to, run the ball and run it well.
Yeah, but I mean, like I mentioned with Tua, everything is on him. The pressure is booming out of the pot for him. So what do you think? We've watched a lot of Tua. I like his game. His quick slant games are probably the best in the league. He's so fast. You see a lot of Drew Brees. But really, I worry about those deeper throws if teams kind of force him to play underneath in the passing game. Obviously, Waddle and Hill help him with spacing, getting open, creating separation. I expect a lot from Tua like anybody else. I'm just not sure if he can answer the call. What do you think about Tua?
Yeah, this is definitely Tua's make or break year, right? I mean, they load up this roster around you with Tyreek Hill, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. You have Jalen Waddle, as we already talked about. You've got those running backs. There's no excuses anymore, right? You have to show that you are capable of taking that next step and being a franchise quarterback. And you either are or you're not. And Tua's been that guy that some people really believe in him and some people really think he's a dud. So this season will determine the rest of his career. And that is tough to say for any NFL player or quarterback, but that is it. You are either going to be somebody's backup next year or you're going to be a top 10 quarterback, elite franchise quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. And you know, it's all in his own hands. I do think if they use his skills correctly, they got to play call to his abilities, right? He's not Josh Allen. He's not going to have the biggest arm in the NFL, but he is accurate and he does throw it well to, you know, short passes. And with these guys who are dynamic playmakers, that's all you got to do. Get the ball in their hands, let them do what they are capable of, and you will benefit from that. So I wish the best for Tua here, but, you know, he's got to, it's all in his own hands.
And one major concern that we haven't mentioned yet is he started 9 games his rookie year, starts 12 games last year. You got to stay healthy to succeed in this league. You got to show up to be successful. You know, Teddy Bridgewater is more than capable of coming in and taking over, and that's worth mentioning. But to be a top team like we expect from the Dolphins, I think Tua has to stay healthy and play well.
Yes.
So that really is what it comes down to for me. All right, next one. Got to mention this. 10 wins in 2020. We already touched on that. 9 wins in 2021 and no playoffs. Are we talking bad luck Miami here, or what do you think? I mean, Brian Flores, I think, is a hell of a coach.
Yes.
And Mike McDaniel, a lot of pressure on him coming in his first year. But this team is better than people give them credit for. You know, to get 10 wins in the NFL with the 17-game schedule is not an easy thing. But to not make the playoffs with 10 wins,
that's rough.
Extremely
right?
Disappointing.
Yes, I mean, I think last year they really took the fate out of their own hands with the, you know, expanded playoffs and all that by only getting 9 wins. Right, this is where we talked about those plays, those inches plays that matter in games. Miami gave up and took the fate out of their own hands. And with 9 wins, that just wasn't enough in the AFC. And this year, the AFC is more competitive than last year. But I think 10 wins and missing the playoffs is hard, even now in this setup. And the Miami Dolphins, they have got to make the playoffs too, right? Let's say Tua has a great year. You know, you cannot win 10 games and not make the playoffs. And again, you have to be in charge of that, meaning you know your opponents on your schedule. You've got to beat the teams you need to beat in order to put yourself in a position that you're above them on the standings, especially when it comes to the AFC. So Miami, they've got to make the playoffs. Part of this is bad luck, but part of it is you've got to control your own destiny.
Right, and 9 wins, 9-8 last year. That's third in the division. They were 10-6 the year before. We're second in the division. No playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So 9-8 is the new 8-8, and I think New England's really their only challenge in the AFC East. But like I said, the AFC I think will beat themselves up. Like the AFC West, for example, is gonna that's gonna be a back and forth. I see that same thing in the AFC North. So Miami could sneak in with 9 or 10 wins this year and be a top squad. So I expect that from them. Which brings us to Miami's over-under, 8.5 wins.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that I am pounding the over on. I think 8.5 is too low for Miami. Their roster is good. We already talked about what the changes they've made. Yes, this is a first-year head coach, and we're not sure how that's going to translate. But I still think that, 8.5 wins is just too low for Miami. They play the Jets. They play New England, where they should be favored in my mind. And if we pull up their schedule, they have some favorable games here that I think are just winnable games for them. They have teams on their schedule that similar to what the Bills have. They have now the Texans, the Browns before the return of Deshaun Watson. They're going to be favored in a lot of these games. And again, they have to put their exclamation point on it and say, this is where we're to stay. But I think 9 or 10 is where I see, that's where our conversation has been. That's where they were the last couple of years. That's the lowest bar in terms of what Miami's expectations are. They want to go 10 above, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, and keep that momentum going. So yeah, it's definitely theirs for the taking here, but I am pounding the over 8.5 for the Miami Dolphins. In terms of
those first 4 games, New England, Baltimore, Buffalo, and then the Bengals, you got to go 2-2, and you can't go 0-4. You can't go 1-3. You've got to go 2-2. So the pressure begins really early for the Dolphins. You get through that stretch. I think there's some winnable games here. Minnesota, I think, is tough, but you got the Jets before them. So after Cincinnati, you got the Jets, Vikings, Steelers, Lions, Bears. Those are winnable games. And then they go, is it 2? I can't see it really good, but is it
away? Yeah.
At Cleveland or away in Cleveland?
The Browns game is at home. And then
so that's a home game,
week, and then the
bye. So yeah, I think you could have a decent record by the bye week, and then that will dictate the rest of the season, right? If the record's not great by the bye week, it's going to be tough down the stretch with the Chargers, Bills, Patriots, even the Packers in there. But if you have some momentum and you have a winning record, I would expect them to get to that 10-win mark.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm again bullish on that. And we didn't even get a chance to talk about the Miami defense, right? Their defense has been looked at as one of these really competitive defenses in the NFL, if they can stay healthy, of course, like any team. But I certainly like what they have, on their defensive side as well to help them get to that point. And really with this team, you're balancing the defense with the offense. You want your offense to produce and beat people, and the defense to do its job, right? That's all you need. You don't need the defense to be an elite number 1 defense in the league. But, on a great day, are they capable of that? Maybe. There are guys on this roster I really like, right? We saw a guy like Melvin Ingram come on last year, and now he's there. And they still have, Xavier Howard and Byron Jones when he's healthy. He's out for at least the beginning of the season. Yeah, so, I mean, they have the guys to compete with good offenses. And I think that's going to help carry them as well. Carry them over that 9-win mark. Let me be more specific. So 9 or 10 wins, definitely.
Yeah, I would say so. And you mentioned the defense. Jalen Phillips, also a player there that I think could become a reliable starting defensive end. Maybe play some outside linebacker.
Right. Young guy. Mm-hmm.
Van Ginkel's a guy that I think Dolphins fans are high on. But most importantly, I wanted to mention the Oregon kid, Javion Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that could really step into that role, and I think he already has it locked down. But I think he could, get into that lower end superstar role. And I just like his game. I think he can do a lot for this defense. So I expect him to show up a lot this year as well in that secondary.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good defense as well.
All right, so let's move on to the New England Patriots. They're plus 475. And there's all sorts of crazy stories about them this offseason. We're not really used to that. Usually it's pretty quiet in New England. Hey, yeah, they're looking good. They're disciplined, but we don't get those vibes from the local media in the New England, Boston area. We're getting more, we don't really know what's going on. We've never seen the offense look this bad, in the last 20 years. So, I mean, that's pretty telling to me that there's some dysfunction going on with the Patriots. What do you think about them being at plus 475?
Yeah, I think, this is good bulletin board material for Bill Belichick and motivating that, team the way he is capable of. And that is probably where the story ends for me, right? Because there's a reason they're dysfunctional this offseason. They lost Josh McDaniels, which we're going to talk about more here, and that led to a whole plethora of problems, right? Now, okay, what do we do next? Where does we go from here? What does our offense even look like? And the talent that we have, do we have the right roster construction, which has been a big criticism of Bill Belichick as, king and in chief there. He runs the whole show. And that's not something that they're built for, I think, long term in terms of the roster is how do we now maintain what our expectations are for this team? You're plus 475. You're predicted to finish third in the division. You are the third favorite to win the division. That is not something New England is used to. And again, although I'm sure the coaching staff is using that as motivation, that's where they belong in my mind, if not worse. So I think that's, I would not bet that with anybody else's money. Let's put it that way.
Right. Just a lot of question marks with New England. I mean, I expect them to be competitive because I don't know this team any other way, right? We've doubted them in the past, and they just continue to find success. Last year was one of those years. Nobody thought they were making the wild card with a rookie quarterback, and they did. I mean, got smoked by Buffalo, but if they played a different team, you'd wonder, would they be competitive? I think with the coaching staff last year, they're always in the game or going to find ways to find success on the field. And you lose some of that with Josh McDaniel now going to Las Vegas. And now it seems like that wasn't really anticipated, right? It kind of seems like, okay, well, I'll bring in people I know, Joe Judge, who was fired, and Matt Patricia, who was available already on the team. Who's calling plays?
Yeah, this has been the biggest story of the offseason, I think, for the New England Patriots is who's calling the plays. And for months and months, they wouldn't say anything about it. And even Mac Jones had a quote that was like, yeah, well, I don't really know. And it's like, okay, even the quarterback is unsure who's calling the plays here. And I guess throughout the preseason, it was Matt Patricia calling the plays. Interesting strategy there. For those of you who don't know, Matt Patricia, predominantly a defensive-minded coach, calling the plays to your quarterback, something, I'm not even sure he did that when he was a head coach with the Lions. So this is a weird thing to happen here where the quarterback's in a weird position. He's not sure what's going on. The team doesn't know who's calling plays. The most recent story that I read is now that Bill Belichick is taking over play calling. He's going to make both the offensive and defensive plays. There's question marks there. Can that affect the defense more because he's used to focusing on the defensive side and letting the offense, run through McDaniels? It's going to be a bit of a tough reset for them, I believe, for this New England Patriots team, especially on the offensive side.
All right. Now, do you think there's value in having a defensive mind call the offense?
No,
because what they're trying to do on defense, you can maybe counter that on offense. Is there that much variation between being an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator? It's still just football. The amount of detail is, it's unbelievable. The amount of detail it takes to coach in the NFL. Like, for example, Peyton Manning, spent 8 hours talking about just a handful of plays at Tennessee. I mean, that shows you the amount of detail they can go in. But we really haven't seen too many people make the jump from one side to the other, if ever, that I can think of. I'm sure it's happened before.
Exactly.
I don't know anything off the top of my head. Interesting strategy here.
There's a couple of things I would compare this to. I'm a scientist, so the first thing I think of is, okay, I'm a biochemist, a cell biologist, molecular biologist, right? And people often think that means I can do or know everything about immunology, and no, that's not really my field. I'm a cell biologist, right? Totally different field. Or to put it in even simpler terms, I like ice cream. It's still warm out. We're still eating ice cream, right? And what do you have on an ice cream? You eat your ice cream on an ice cream cone, huh? So you've got a cone made by a cone manufacturer and the ice cream made by your ice cream place, right? So do you want the cone manufacturer making your ice cream? They know a lot about ice cream. They have to because they make those cones. But the ice cream and the cone, just because they're two components, doesn't mean they're the same thing, right? I don't want the cone maker making the ice cream. Focus on the cone and we'll make the ice cream. And that's the problem here. Now you've got, yes, these defensive coaches, they're quality coaches. They know defense, but that doesn't mean they know offense. Your focus is defense. Stay there. The offensive coordinator's job is to think about offense, to know how to plan for defenses. So this story about, oh, well, they know the defense, so they know what defensive coordinators are thinking is way too complex and way too much of an excuse in my mind for the lack of having somebody who knows offenses and knows what they're doing on that side of the ball.
So I see what you're saying, like Matt Patricia, right? Doesn't have the years, doesn't have the experience. Joe Judge, special teams guy, doesn't have the experience.
They're good coaches.
But Bill Belichick has been in the league since it began, it seems like. He's been around all of it. He knows the history of the game. He probably studied it more than anybody else in the league, I would assume. But now, do you think Bill Belichick calling plays, is he a guy who can go from ice cream maker to cone maker?
No, again, because it's the same kind of story, right? That's like saying, I am a world-class athlete, Olympic swimmer. I'm an Olympic swimmer. I've won gold medal after gold medal after gold medal. And now I'm going to go play, ice hockey. And I'm going to be an ice hockey coach. Ice hockey is a good sport. And I'm an elite athlete at what I do. So I can go do that. No. Where Bill Belichick found his success is letting other people make the play calls on offense, is letting somebody else run the show so you can focus on the defense. And he won all those Super Bowls and was elite and the best team in the NFL for a long time under that formula. Now trying this under a new formula and saying I'm going to go play ice hockey as a champion swimmer is not going to work for Bill Belichick. I do not think he's not some completely grand mastermind guy. That's not who he is. He's a defensive coordinator, coach, and he's been an elite head coach for a long time because he's had the right formula. Now that the formula's changed, I think this New England team is gonna struggle a little bit.
Not to mention, I think the game is changing. Bill Belichick's now on the existing guard, if you will.
Yeah,
a lot of young coaches in the league right now. The Sean McVays, the Kyle Shanahans. We said Kevin O'Connell for Minnesota is like 36 or 37. The difference is technology. I'm not sure if Bill's, he doesn't seem like a technology guy, right? So that'll be really interesting to watch and break down the play calling later in the year just to see where's the gap between the young generation of coaches versus the old guard. So that's going to be a lot of fun to pay attention to. Another big topic for New England is how will Mac Jones fare in his second year? You expect to see a jump. Again, the media in New England just says he's struggling. He's confused with the play calls. We've also seen distractions and things from New England, so I'm always suspicious about them. But do you expect a big jump for Mac Jones in his second year, like we're used to seeing with other quarterbacks?
Listen, I think it's time to come to reality. Eric, I know throughout the years in the podcast, we've had to reel you in a little bit when it comes to reality. The Bills are better than the New England Patriots. This is not the same New England Patriots team. There is nothing to be afraid of. We killed them last year. They are dead. They are buried. They are gone. They had the legacy, but they are gone. The Bills destroyed that last year. It is over. 8 touchdown, perfect game performance in the playoffs after destroying them in the second game of the regular season. It is over. There is no more New England ghost. So the problems that we're seeing here are now real problems for this team. They aren't going to miraculously come back from this. And Pro Bowl quarterback, by the way, Mac Jones, which is always fun to say, in his second year now, he's having all of these issues because of the changes we've stated. It's going to take an adjustment. Even if he was an elite quarterback, with all the changes that have been made, I'd probably give him a 4-game grace period before I start to judge what's actually happening in this offense and if there's something really going off the rails here. So he's got that leeway to start with, but the problem is now, how does he deal with that moving forward now that we've seen the struggles of the preseason?
Right.
These struggles are real. He doesn't know what's going on, what the play calls are. He's got to make that connection with the players on the field, with the plays that are being called. And I think that, again, is something that leads to trouble for this New England offense.
Then I'll say, Mac Jones' rookie year was impressive.
It was.
It impressed me, not so much in his physical ability, but working to his strengths, and that's decision-making.
Yep.
He could diagnose a play very fast for being a rookie and act on that. And then that they were a pretty decent offense at times last year. and obviously a playoff team. So they deserve all the credit for that. Being able to make the transition from college to the NFL in 1 year is a lot of credit to the New England Patriots organization. Maybe Josh McDaniels had a lot to do with that. So to not continue that trend and give Mac Jones the tools that he needs, that would be a mistake. If these reports are true that the offense is very confused and cone makers are trying to make ice cream and it's causing problems, that would be a big disservice to a guy like Mac Jones, who has the ability to cognitively play in the NFL, which is a lot of times the big challenge. I would hate to see him take a step back. But again, we don't know what New England's up to. I still expect him to improve. You bring in Devontae Parker, you bring in Hunter Henry last year, Jonnu Smith last year. There's a lot to like about New England's offense. It's just really the questions are, can they put it all together?
Yeah, I mean, they do have offensive weapons. That's true. I like Hunter Henry. He did have a good year last year, where Jonnu Smith was a ghost. I mean, he just totally disappeared. Can they get him more involved this year? I think they have to with what they paid him. They just restructured his contract, but he has to produce more this year without a doubt. You do bring in a guy like Devontae Parker. You've got some younger guys in Jacoby Myers who, again, when is he going to come on for them? I just don't believe in their pass catching ability here, especially their wide receivers. I'm not a strong believer in. Maybe Parker can get more of those short passes to click more with Mac Jones, but again, I'm not lining up there. The run game is something to talk about with New England always. They run the ball. They run it with multiple guys. They run it well, right? And Ramondre Stevenson now is somebody who could come on for this team. Damian Harris, I expect them to continue to try and run the ball, control the clock, manage the game as best they can, in order to try and score points and win games. So Mac Jones, is the right quarterback for that. When he came out of college, is what I said about him then too. He is consistently who he is. I don't think he's a guy who has a high ceiling, but he doesn't have a low floor either. He can manage a team. He can make those quick passes. He can get you first downs. He's not going to make a lot of explosive plays, but they've kind of built this roster around having a quarterback like Mac Jones. And I think that could be their saving grace if they can do it. If they can put it all together.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I said, tougher division this year. New England's at 8.5 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Taking the over or taking the under?
This is, might surprise some people here, but I'm taking the under. And yes, I'm a Bills fan, and I've hated New England my whole life, but I think this season is just going to be the wake-up call here again. We've said this for a couple years now. Rookie quarterback, like you said, they exceeded expectations last year, made the playoffs. But this schedule and the teams and the way it works out, I am under 8.5 wins. I think they're right around that 7-8 mark. And that means, this is a bet I like for going through these teams throughout the NFL. Under 8.5 for the New England Patriots. Tough schedule here.
So you're taking the under. I got 10 wins last year. Man, tough one for them. I think they're going to be right around 8 or 9 wins, and that's why it is very difficult to call this one. If the reports are true that the offense is dysfunctional, I would clearly go the under. But I think outside of that, because Miami is good, the AFC is improved, I just don't think this team's built for the modern-day NFL to compete with the Josh Allens twice a year. Baltimore's a high-scoring team.
Exactly.
Good defense. We got Green Bay on the schedule. I just don't think from the roster standpoint, I don't think New England has the personnel to compete with the better teams. So I'm going to go under as well, but I do have them around, between 6 and 8 wins, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Yeah, you're not totally counting them out, but look at the start on that schedule. You've got Miami, who's coming out, trying to prove something. Pittsburgh, they're rebuilding, but that could be a tough game for them. Baltimore Ravens, this is the one that I think is going to show that exactly what you said. This this New England team is not built to play teams like the Baltimore Ravens, who play a very modern offense. And Green Bay, a team you're talking about, Aaron Rodgers coming in here. Yeah, that's going to be tough on this. They do have an easy stretch for a while: Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago, the Jets. But Indy, Minnesota, Buffalo, Arizona, Las Vegas, Cincinnati, they've got a murderer's row at the end of their schedule. And their only saving grace might be that if the Bills have clinched by the last week of the season, they won't play their starters, and maybe New England can eke out a win there. But I'm not even trusting that at this point. So it's going to be a tough stretch, even if they're 500 at their bye.
Yeah, going to be tough. I never count them out, but it is a tougher schedule with a average to subpar, a below average roster, we'll say. All right, but I say that every year. All right, New York plus 2,200. The Jets, a lot of storylines coming out this year. I do like the roster moves that they've made. Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson in the draft. Last year they get Zach Wilson, get Elijah Moore. They are building something here. Tough news about Mekhi Becton. Again, you hate to see that. Love the kid coming out of the draft. Thought he could do a lot for this offense, especially with that San Francisco background that the head coach has. I thought that would help them a lot. What are your thoughts on New York being plus 2,200?
This is one of those bets that pops out to you when your eyes see plus 2,200. Wow, that's a good bet there. But the problem is this is still the Buffalo Bills division, and I think that's what's driving this number to be so high. I am also higher on the Jets than most people are, I think. And I love the moves that they made. Love the offseason that they had. Plus 2,200, tempting, but avoid at all costs because this is the Bills division, and I fully expect that the Bills will take it. And if not them, Miami's going to be competitive. That's where I would put the Jets probably in third place above New England at this point. We'll get to that later. But yeah, 2,200 jumps out at you. No thanks. No thanks.
I mean, if you have a high risk tolerance, this is a good bet. Really, I mean, let's compare the Jets roster to Miami. The Jets are right in that conversation. Obviously, if they had Mekhi Becton, they'd be much in that conversation. It'd be a better argument. But Zach Wilson has all the skills, physically to make that big jump and come out and be a different player, right? That's the expectation in New York for him. That's the expectation for any quarterback that's drafted in the top 5. But I like watching Zach Wilson. There's a lot to like about him. I would like to see him process the game a little faster this year, but his injury is going to set him back, which you hate to see.
Yeah.
So I don't think just because of those two players going down, that's going to set them back a little. But you talk about weapons. Garrett Wilson is a phenomenal talent coming out of Ohio State. Elijah Moore is high expectation for him too. He can do a lot in the slot and the underneath game. There's a lot to like about the roster. Quinnen Williams, who's now been there a number of years, continues to play at a high level. CJ Mosley, one of the better linebackers in the league. I mean, I can go on and on about their roster, but for some reason, people just don't have the expectation that they do for the Dolphins. But I could argue all day that Zach Wilson's in a better position than Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, I think everything you said there is legitimate. This roster is great. And quite honestly, I think we're going to talk about in one of the next topics here. They had one of the best drafts I've ever seen, at least from the draft time. Obviously, we don't know what these players are going to be in 5 years or if they're all going to be hits. But when you're talking about, I think they got 3 top 10 players in this draft. 3 top 10 quality players in the NFL draft went to the New York Jets. That is an incredible upgrade in and of itself, but they didn't stop there. They got guys in the offseason to help build this team as well. And roster construction wise, I trust this regime is doing the right thing for the Jets, which has not been the case in the past. So that's the difference. People think, this is the Jets of past, but under their new GM and with Robert Saleh as head coach, they've really been building this the right way, very quietly. And I think competitive wise, they're building it so that now, next year, if they take another step, they could be competing with the Bills for the division. And that is exactly where they want to be. And they might show everybody that this season. That is their goal, right? They're not, coming out here saying we're going to win the Super Bowl, no matter what they tell you inside that room. But what they could do is come out and show that they are a team to take seriously to contend in the AFC again. And they're not the joking Jets of past. And that starts with Zach Wilson. I mean, he has to be able to take that step and grow. I love Zach Wilson. I think he has all the potential in the world. Now he's got to put it into action and start showing growth in his second year. that injury is very unfortunate for him because we don't know how long it's going to take, a couple of weeks for him to be out, and unfortunately for the Jets, that means less than ideal situation at quarterback with the aging Joe Flacco. But can he manage this team to get a few wins while Zach Wilson is out? We'll see how that works out. But yeah, the season is going to revolve around Zach Wilson and his growth, right? He can't throw as many interceptions. He can't make as many boneheaded plays. It's more about mental growth and talent growth at the quarterback position. That's really what matters. That's what we need to see from Zach Wilson.
For sure. Yeah, this team hasn't been in the playoffs since 2010. They haven't won the division since 2002. So, I mean, just you start to get desperate, right? They finished at the bottom of the division the last 2 years. They have a total of 6 wins in 2 years. Something's got to give for this team. The roster's there. They continue to get – I think they draft well. That remains to be seen. But they continue to get good draft picks, draft positions. But with that, it puts a lot of expectation on young players. This is a young roster. But there's a lot to like here. Garrett Wilson coming out, obviously Zach Wilson, we've talked about Elijah Moore, Sauce Gardner, Jerome Johnson. If they could take a step this year, I would like to see the Jets, be above 500 after the midpoint of the season. That would give me a lot of, that would drive expectations for next year. But that's my personal expectation for the Jets, or what I would like to see is some of these young players start to figure it out, start to, adopt a game plan and execute on the field. And that starts with Zach Wilson, as we've mentioned. But these other players as well, you want to see it from them, as you move forward.
Yeah, again, I'm really high on these young guys. Ahmad Sauce Gardner, one of my favorite players in this year's draft, probably the best cornerback in this year's draft. I loved, that pick alone. We kind of knew that one was coming. But then you had the Garrett Wilson pick, which, you're again talking one of the top receivers in this draft class, expected to go in the top 10, and that's where he went, 10 overall. But on the defensive side, they also picked up Jermaine Johnson, who was capable of being one of those elite guys on this in terms of pass rush in this draft class, and they got him all the way down at 26. So they really, really did what they needed to do to improve this team. That's not even talking about Breece Hall at running back. They picked up a tight end. They really fixed their tight end. They signed Uzma in the offseason and then got Jeremy Ruckert. I love what the Jets did in their draft, in their offseason, quietly building this team to get better.
For sure, yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. 32nd in the league in points allowed last year, 32nd in the league in yards allowed. So, got to continue to build that defense out, got to continue to show up. Robert Saleh, defensive-minded head coach. So I think it would start there. Second to Zach Wilson, want to see the defense improve. So right. Jets over under 5.5. What do you think about 5.5 for the Jets? Like I said, last year was 4 wins. The year before was 2. I take the over here. I go over 5.5 for the Jets because I do like the roster. And I think they start to figure it out. They've been together. There's a little bit of continuity going on here. Robert Saleh now in his second year. We got through the Adam Gase distractions and all that stuff. I think the Jets are due to at least get 6 wins.
I am with you on this one, actually. I'm taking the over on the Jets, and I feel pretty comfortable about it. I said earlier, alluding to the troubles that New England is having, I think the Jets finished 3rd in this division. I think they definitely get the 6 wins, so I am pounding that 5.5 win mark over for the Jets. I think they get there. I think this is a great bet. If you're out there, bet on this. Take your mom's money, take your grandma's money, bet it on this. This is a good one, I think, for the Jets this year. They have to prove it. Like you said, they have to go out and actually do it now. But with the roster they have and the coaching they have, they're moving in the right direction. They remind me of all of the best teams that you can name that have done things the right way. You bring in a new head coach, GM, they start to rebuild. They get the pieces they need. They slowly show incremental improvement to get to the goal, whatever that may be, making the playoffs, reaching that Super Bowl. The Jets certainly aren't there yet, but I expect fully that they will get over 5.5 wins.
Yeah, all good. Let's just pop the schedule up for the Jets real quick. We'll run out of time here.
Yeah,
tough schedule. I mean, Philadelphia week 1. Atlanta's winnable. Giants, I think it's relatively soft in the beginning. I'm sorry, that's preseason.
That's preseason. So week 1 there. Week 1 is the Ravens. Yeah,
Ravens. Yeah. Okay, a little different. Then you got the Cleveland Browns, which are a stacked roster with the best player in the NFL, Myles Garrett. Cincinnati Bengals, Pittsburgh. So you got all AFC North teams right out the gate. So that is going to be tough, but you're gonna measure yourself by week 4. You'll know how good you are as a team, and I think they could start to build off that. Right, moving into Miami, you got Green Bay, Denver, the Patriots, and then the Buffalo Bills at the end, right before the bye week.
Right, and with that tough stretch at the beginning, they do have an easier kind of stretch at the end. They have the Bears, Minnesota, and the Bills are tough teams, but then you have the Lions, the Jaguars, the Seahawks, and Miami, all winnable games, I think, competitive games for them. So don't sleep on this Jets team. Despite that hard stretch that they have, we're really going to see early on what this team is capable of, if they can compete or if they're going to fall on their face. But I am definitely thinking they can pull 6 wins.
For sure. All right, last question of the day. Who's the worst starting quarterback? Who's the worst starting quarterback in the AFC East?
Worst. Oh, that is. We always do second. Question.
We always do.
If I had to rank them,
who's the worst?
I honestly would have to probably pick Mac Jones at this point because of what I said earlier. I think he's consistent. I don't think he's going to get much worse, but I just don't think he's better. Tua and Zach Wilson, what they have are much higher ceilings. They can be top 10 quarterbacks in this league if they reach their potential. Mac Jones does not have that ability in my mind. So that's why I would
physical ability. Okay.
Yeah, and that's why if I could choose 4 quarterback of those 4 quarterbacks, that's who I would choose. I would choose Mac Jones last just because I don't want consistency. I want somebody who has that superstar ability.
Yeah, I would take Mac Jones over Tua, but for me, Tua would be 4. Again, love the underneath game, but there's just a lot of question marks about arm strength. Can he play? Can he process? I'll take cognitive ability over physical ability in a lot of cases.
Mac
Obviously,
Jones does have that.
There's exceptions to that, like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. I want a physical freak, but second to that, I'll take cognitive ability. We'll try to play the Tom Brady game. Mac Jones has that type of potential.
Definitely.
I don't think Tua has shown that yet. Doesn't mean he can't get there, but hasn't shown it yet. So I would go Mac Jones over Tua. All right, see you next time.